Hey, motorcycle and powersports news fans, I'm Greg Jones, and welcome to another episode of Power Players. Today I'm joined in studio by Jessica Shine and Gunnar Heinemeyer of Brands That Shine. Jessica, Gunnar, thanks for joining us today in the studio here.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for
Absolutely.
having us.
You guys came quite a way from Washington State to be here in Ohio, so we appreciate you guys making the trip down. Now, generally, we start with some backgrounds on the show first to get to know everybody. And, you know, both of you guys have been in this industry for a little while. But I wanted to start with something really cool that you guys recently just did was a 15-month road trip around the country, you know, visiting dealers and different manufacturers and all sorts of industry folks.
Yep.
So my first question for you is just like the logistics of that had to be kind of crazy, but it also had to be a little fun for you.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about that.
So we're building a house in Washington. We bought a property, and I decided, well, while we're building, because we didn't want to pay for two houses, let's just live in an RV while we're building.
Yeah.
And then I thought, well, there's no reason to have an RV sitting there for however long this build takes, which could be years nowadays with supply chain issues.
Sure.
And I thought, let's drive it around the country, because I'm an immigrant from Germany. I've only been American for a little over a year, and I didn't immigrate to sit in an office or in an RV on a property. I wanted to see the country.
What did I say when you asked me about living in an RV?
Are you going to be there?
And I live on a boat. At the time, I lived on a boat. So I was like, cool, let's go.
Let's go. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's basically how it started. It was a little bit more involved than that. We bought the motorhome, and then for 6 months, we did a bunch of research on what to do when you're permanently in an RV traveling and what not to do. Yeah, and
That's smart.
yeah, YouTube was very helpful there.
That's excellent.
Yeah.
So just walk us through, you know, how many states did you guys travel to? How many miles did you do? I mean, 15 months is a significant chunk of time.
Yep.
Yeah, we kicked off, February 10th of 2021. And we had left from Idaho. And our first experience 2 days in was getting iced in Wilsonville, Oregon. So we were actually stuck there for several days.
Yeah, ice rain, 2 inches or 3 inches of ice on the motorhome and everything else.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So he was able to see a few dealers because there was a rep in the area he could ride with. I mean, it was mostly over a weekend, but that was our first excitement. And we went, okay, well, we wanted an adventure.
Yeah.
Our Harleys are stuck in the trailer for a while because we can't ride them anywhere.
Probably gave you some second thoughts right out of the gate, right?
We just knew we were going to be in for one.
Yeah.
We made our way down the coast. I know that we flew to Bike Week. We didn't drive to Bike Week that time. We flew over the first time.
Parked the motorhome.
Yeah, and then continued down the coast through April. I think we took till April just to get down the West Coast.
Yeah.
From there, hooked a left at San Diego and started making our way across to Houston. Basically, and then made a left and started going all the way up. But hitting races on the way. We went to the mile at Oklahoma City. So events were just starting to open up again, which was the most interesting at the time. We had started, as you know, contributing articles for MPN about dealer visits, which at that time our goal was to see what's going on, right, with all the dealers. And especially in a time with COVID, everybody was responding differently and had different restrictions. And so going through different areas at that early time was very interesting because some shops we couldn't go into, a lot of the reps we couldn't travel with yet because they were still pretty grounded. Having to respect different responses depending on where we were. Are we masking? Are we not? Are we allowed in? Are we standing away? Are we here? So we got a whirlwind of U.S. COVID culture, if you will,
Absolutely.
during that time.
Ultimately, we visited 43 states and covered 18,000 miles of U.S. highways and freeways. And that's not counting the miles we put on our motorcycles when we were parked actually visiting the dealers, because the motorhome was to get to where we were going.
To a spot.
Yeah,
to a spot, and then the motorcycles were our transportation to the actual dealers.
Yeah.
So I don't know how many miles we did total.
Oh, yeah, because we'd leave
was
for
a
hours
lot.
and jump on the bikes. In fact, one of my bikes didn't make it. She, for those who know Bertha, I have a 90 FLH TCU that has been loved by many people in the industry, and by loved I mean given a lot of parts. And she made it to Chicago in September. So she made it for 7 months, and then Gunnar was sick of working on her. So we left it with the Windy City Group, and they stored her while she got towed back. And I bought a little Dyna, little 99 Dyna convertible. Nice. So that one doesn't have as many miles, but it's nice to be able to show our part. That's the one thing that's been really well received is when we show up at the dealers. When we ride with the reps, we're in their car usually. But when we show up at the dealer, we show up on our bikes, and we have our products, and we have some samples in there. And he had his big Nelson Rig tour bag. We'd put samples in. I put them in mine, and they're like, "You guys rode here from Washington?" Like,
yep,
kinda.
We absolutely did.
11 months ago. Right. But yeah, it was really fun to see the response. I think. Because we've called on a few and had repeat events. They're, oh, yeah, you're the couple that's been driving around the country. And, yeah, people have done it before. But I think the extent is a little different. It's not really a consumer-focused thing. It's not putting on shows. It's not just us in a van. It's not staying in motels. It's kind of a different dynamic. We have our dogs and our cat that we rescued from Daytona Bike Week, who is, this will be his 1-year anniversary with us.
Oh, nice.
But yeah, it's been an interesting adventure. We've seen a lot of manufacturers. Yeah. So it's been educational.
Yes.
The vendors that we currently work with, but also just other partners that we've known throughout the industry. Because, as you know, with us, it's not. At the end of the day, you clock out at 5 o'clock and go home and never talk to people. I mean, we're talking to all our different manufacturing partners all day, all night. Those are our friends. That's our family. So, ring, ring. We're in town. How big's your driveway? Do you have space for us? Can we plug in?
55 feet.
Yeah. So let's get back to some of that. Talking about brands that shine and how you guys got there. Jessica, let's start with you and just some of your background in this industry. Okay. I know you've had brands that shine for several years now, but how? What was your path to get there?
Oh gosh, short end of the stick. I drew the longest straw. What do you call it? So industry-wise, I dabbled around starting in the early 2000s. I worked with a lot of independent dealers, whether doing events for them, marketing, dealer rides, managing websites. And then I started an aftermarket company, an audio company. From there, went into manufacturing, which is where I met a lot of people internationally. And in 2017, that relationship ended very early. And doing what you do, that was, let's say, spring. So you've got several major shows that are happening at that time. So I spent a lot of money to buy a ticket to, I want to say it was Indianapolis or Louisville, somewhere cold, because it was a February show under a different brand. And they let me come out there to come to the show. And I was basically looking for a job to go do something similar. And a very key partner of mine, a valuable e-commerce buyer of mine said, don't look for a job. Just forget all that. You need to go home and start your own thing. We need something like this. And without you having to go to a manager and get it approved and look at the ROI, he's like, your passion's there. That's what we need. Yeah. And I was like, it's like consultant? Because no offense, that kind of felt like, someone who couldn't get a job or maybe an in-between thing. And I didn't want to be perceived that way. And he put it to me in a much better context where he said, no, start a company. You decide your brands. You pick the ones you want to work with and you go after it. And I went, okay. So I lost my job on February 2nd. The show must have been February 5th. I mean, it was within a few days. The LLC and the business was formed February 14th, 2017. So my Valentine's present was this business. And
there you go.
It's the only one I've ever celebrated.
There you go. That's awesome. Well, we'll get more into brands that shine in a second, but I want to give Gunnar a chance to talk about your background because you've also been in this industry for a little while.
A lot longer.
A little while, yeah. I started in 1991 as a technician at Honda.
Okay.
And
which is an unknown fact because everybody thinks he only knows V12. I love to point that out.
I'm the Harley guy, and I started out at Honda. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I went from Honda to Harley-Davidson as a technician. And this was in Germany. Yeah. And then Custom Chrome Europe needed an inside salesperson to cover the UK. And because the UK dealers are they don't like to be sold things. They want someone with technical knowledge. So I was the best person for the job, except that I had 0 sales experience. But I turned out to be a pretty good salesman, and then Custom Chrome Europe transitioned me into product management, and that's what I did up until we started.
Till July 31st.
Yeah, till July 31st.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was at Custom Chrome Europe, and then they brought me over to California to Custom Chrome Incorporated. And then at some point I went to Western Powersports and helped them build the hard drive division.
Yeah.
9 years later.
9 years later.
He's now my boss.
Yep.
Yeah.
No.
Well, very good. So again, appreciate the background on kind of how you guys got to the point where you're at today. So Jessica, if you could tell us exactly, what Brands That Shine is about today. Who are some of the companies that you work with, and how do you help them, and what's kind of your role?
Oh gosh, kind of making it up as we go along, truly. So I started with one brand that I'd already kind of known and signed them, and they tend to come and go. But basically what we do is we take a manufacturer, a brand that either is in the U.S. and needs help getting into the supply chain, get them into distribution, work out their margins, just help them program themselves, or get a European or overseas brand that wants to grow in the U.S., which I've had several of those as well, because we know the market and we can help them, and I also know their market. So that's ultimately what we do. We've got about 50-50 that have happened, that have gone from Europe that need help here. We've got one solid one. Well, I guess you want to speak of them anyway. So one of them, a U.S. brand that we have, is DK Custom Products. And a lot of consumers knew them because they've got a great YouTube channel. They're very informational, and they were a direct-to-consumer company.
Yeah.
And I went in there as a rep with a catalog rep. They were setting them up as a dealer. I just happened to be along and found a lot of products that were valuable. And he was very familiar with a couple of them. And I said, okay, let's get them into distribution. So I got him into several distributors here in Europe, in Australia.
Yeah.
So that's a classic case of an American small town there in Red Banks, Mississippi. We love working with them. We've got several brands overseas. One newer signing is SBS Brakes out of Denmark. We've been working with them this year, helping them grow their U.S. sales through distribution.
Yeah, and I understand you were just over there.
We did a very cool tour after the EICMA show in Italy. We actually went to his mom's in France for a little bit of time off, and then went over to Denmark and toured the facility and met with our teams and got to see some really cool stuff about how their brakes are made and some things that separate them from the other guys. So might get you some separate information on that when we get it pulled together.
Absolutely.
We actually just signed, it's still wet, but Denali brand, which is an adventure lighting company, accessory lighting, commonly known through Twisted Throttle, has been their distribution partner here. They're now owned by Vision X out of Washington and Auburn, which is an automotive company, so these guys might know them. Similarly, overseas in the UK, we represent R&G Crash Protection, which is well known amongst the road racing community and some of the adventure community. Want to pick up a couple? Sometimes we have to look at the back of our business card.
To go.
You definitely have a lot.
Yeah.
If you give us a segment, we can rattle them off because we just go 1, 2, 3. What kind of shop are we in?
There's Codlin USA, Fred Codlin, German bike builder, his son, and Holger Moore, formerly Custom Chrome.
Perfect one for him to do.
They founded Codlin USA, and it's basically aftermarket lighting, suspension components, some sheet metal, cool bolt-on products for Harleys.
Yeah.
Cameras?
The cameras, we have Innov cameras. They're vehicle-mounted dash/action cameras, and they have a new product out. It's a helmet camera that's going to go up against the big guys that are already out there.
Yeah, we're seeing a lot of engagement on that one.
Yeah.
Your Hunters?
Oh, yeah, Rambo Bikes. Rambo Bikes is another one we signed. It's not really power sports, but kind of. I mean,
it's e-bikes. We're all embracing it.
Right.
Yeah, e-power is being embraced by the power sports industry. And these guys are not just another e-bike. They've picked their niche, and it's hunting and fishing. They're very outdoor specific. Their accessories are gun racks, bow racks, kayak racks if you like kayak fishing. And then instead of getting in your side-by-side and being limited by where you can go, with a bicycle, you can go anywhere.
Yeah.
And you don't have to haul out your your deer. You can tow it out.
Yeah. Well, like you guys said, you rattled off a whole list of people that you guys work with, and certainly more segments that you're involved in than you're not involved in. So that's awesome. I wanted to ask both you, again, you guys go into the dealers, you're speaking with dealers almost every day, educating them and getting updates. So what's that like when you guys go into a dealership? What's that conversation that you're having with them? And then vice versa, what are they helping tell you? What are you guys seeing in the industry today?
The conversation starts when we prepare our travel with emailing the dealers that we're intending to visit so they know that we're coming, or the reps, the distributor reps that we travel with. And we basically go in with product samples. We try to start with something shiny that gets their attention. When we have their attention, then we go to products that might not be so sexy, like brake pads, but
functional, point out all the key, something that's going to interest them. If we're in the Northwest, we know the Go Green feature is going to be exciting to them. If we know they're near a track, we're going to start with the racing features. So we kind of try to walk in and look at the type of shop we're in. Independent, are they licensed multi-line, are they bar and shield?
What do they already have hanging on the wall? So we can maybe find a gap that our product fits in, or determine that they don't specialize in the areas of the products that we represent. So it's a lot of walking in and looking around before you even speak to someone, and then try to engage them and give them something of value for their business. Yeah,
try to attach something relevant to them. And when we're not with the rep, if we for some reason we can't, whether they're not available or they have another, or whatever the case may be, sometimes it just doesn't work out. Typically, what I'll try to do is go in and find out who their reps are before we go in, because as soon as they realize that we're not to compete with their rep, we're there to support them. They can't buy from us. We're just there to educate. So I'll come in and say, hey, would have loved to come in with Joe or Bob or Susie, but unfortunately it didn't work out this trip. I'm here to support them. Who do you buy from the most? Which catalog do you buy from the most? That's the information we're trying to get them. So they go, oh, well, I don't have that rep here, or this guy never shows up, or our kids didn't get along. So, depending on the town you're in, there's a lot of different dynamics.
Sure.
So I like to find out which rep they're ordering from the most, but then give them the information. Then we'll typically follow up with the rep and say, this is what we showed them, this is what they were interested in. We always come to the dealer with a very kind of hands-off, because we have had people say, well, can I order it from them or do I order it from you? No. I mean, 90% of the things we have, we can't sell you anything, but a lot of it you can't get from the manufacturer anyway. So we just say, go buy this from the rep that is your favorite. That's between you guys. We're just here to educate the products. And if they have an event, they can come directly to us or ask their rep, hey, can you get some swag sent over? We want to be a resource for them, for the manufacturer.
Absolutely.
And the information we get back is what's trending in the area. And we can take that back to our clients, the manufacturers, and say, hey, this is what people are looking for, or this is what's on a decline, what's not being used anymore, or this is what a need that's in the market that's not being serviced. So we get that kind of information back. When we first started on our trip, what we heard at every single dealership was nobody had staff. It was first no one had staff, and then because of all the supply chain snags, no one had no inventory.
All we had to do was we had inventory, and that they'd let us in the door.
Exactly. But staffing that was all across the country, from the West Coast to the East Coast.
Well, and multiple industries too. I mean, you've seen it in automotive that getting good people is still tough.
It is,
and they've had the inventory problem too. So it seems like it's just now starting to get back to where it needs to be.
We were just looking at, they're breaking out, vehicles are everywhere.
There were times when we walked into dealerships and there was almost nothing on the floors. And that was crazy.
And half of our sales pitch is, hey, can you dress a floor bike? You've got two of this version. Let's put this on this bike. And we couldn't get them to bite because they didn't have any, or they couldn't keep them in.
They'd hang it on the wall, but they wouldn't put it on a bike.
I see two of that one. Can we... I see some RNG crash protection we can throw on there. I see some Denali lights that can go on. Oh, you got a Harley over here. Let's put a Codlin on there. Cameras, all 4 of those, please. That's the nice part. Depending on the dealer we go in, we have 3 things we can talk about. People say, do you have too much? No, if we go into a V-twin shop, we have 3 different brands we can talk about, maybe 4, depending on what kind of shop they're in. We go into a moto shop, a couple. We go into off-road ATV, 3, 4. So it's really not a lot. We're not boring them with a whole list of stuff. It's a couple shiny things.
Yeah. So Gunnar, obviously outside of the staff and some of the inventory issues we've seen, what are some of those other trends that maybe aren't so particular to a market or a segment, but maybe some of those more widespread ones that you guys have seen recently?
Information. Probably there's a lot of information.
The way people get information,
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. It's not.
It's a tough one.
Obviously trade shows are dying in the powersports industry. People are getting a lot from social media.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Or their buddy.
There's no more print magazines. Or my buddy has this. It's the way the consumers and dealers are getting their information is changing very, very quickly.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, certainly as, media company in that space, we've had to ebb and flow and change how we deliver a message. And
I can imagine.
Info, so absolutely.
Yeah.
I can relate.
Yeah. And I think this is why what we are doing is seeing so much interest is because, yes, all the distributors have their sales reps out, but they have 1,400 page catalogs with 700 brands. And
they're all still in the same region.
Yeah, and 20, 30, 60, 70,000 SKUs, and there's no focus except on the seasonal buying programs and that. But we bring the focus to the brand for the rep, educating the rep and the dealer.
Yeah.
The only thing we don't do is consumer.
Yeah, you guys can have all that. No, the reps are vital because they have the relationships.
Yes.
A lot of them grew up in the same town. They worked in the dealership. They worked their way up. They know their catalog and how to access things. Our job is to support them and keep bringing information. And then the dealers, they have their reps, which is great to access products, but they're not always seeing what's happening outside of their region because they're not going to the shows anymore.
Yeah.
That was the beautiful thing about Cincinnati and Indy and going to the distributor trade shows and even AIM. I hope to see a lot of this stuff grow because that was one of the things I used to write about in the article for AIM for MPN was the reason dealers should go is to see if the guy's on the other side of the country is not a competitor. Maybe he has a similar shop, but they have a different demographic. Maybe he can bring something over here that isn't trending yet. He can be where, that's something we can bring to the reps and the dealers because the reps aren't going to see it unless they're going to the other parts of the country too. So it's kind of a compliment.
Not to bash anybody, but we've come across dealerships or dealership personnel that are stuck in their ways.
Oh yeah.
They know what they know and they don't
want to know anything else.
They don't want to know anything else, but they're missing out. The people that are keeping up on the trends, no matter where they get their information, they're the ones that we see as most successful. Yep. They have 40, 50 bikes in the shop that they're working on. They have their walls full of stuff that doesn't have dust on it because we see that too. We've seen all those aspects. Yeah. And if you don't keep up on what's going on out there, then we hear we hear things like, well, our customer base is drying up. Yes, because you're not doing what the customer base that's out there wants.
Or what about our buddy out west who said, well, I just don't want to train my guys on anything else. It's hard enough to get them to learn what they do know, the parts they do know. I'd rather them just stick with the parts they know. And I'm like, love them to death, but I'm just like, oh man, that's painful for us to hear because in the aftermarket world, it's constantly growing and changing. And for us to hear that, we're like, oh, you're cutting off your customer, and how are they going to have a cooler bike than the other guy that's visiting her? So, it's.
Well, again, it's great that you guys have been that. I don't want to say middleman, but you guys are kind of working between both sides.
Yeah, absolutely.
An ambassador, because we're for the dealer too. We come back and tell the manufacturer, hey, the dealers need these for support. So.
And vice versa, right? Yeah, so that's great. So Jessica, you guys are now 6-7 years into this. Looking forward, whether it's a year, a few years, what's something that you guys have on the horizon for, yourselves and the company?
We continue to grow and concrete our brands. We're in for a long-term commitment, so we've got some 5-year plus goals. I don't say commitment, but goals with some of our contracted brands. Our building and our house will contain our offices and our shop and all of our testing and samples and everything, and so that'll be our landing board. We'll still continue to travel. This year we're following the Moto America circuit for several of our brands because they're so involved in racing.
Yeah.
So every month we will be at the race and then do some rep travel or dealer visits around it. We'll continue to travel to see dealers. It may change the angle a little bit. Maybe we won't be taking this motorhome. Maybe we'll get a smaller one when we have the house. Maybe we'll fly more. I mean, it depends too, because flying right now that we've been talking about is like a Greyhound in the sky. It's just the service is crap. You can be status flyers like us, and just it's a nightmare.
Yeah.
And it's overpriced.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So having the comforts of home traveling. So the way in which we travel might vary.
Mm-hmm.
We want to get in some more overseas shows. We want to hunt cool and innovative products that might need to be seen here because a lot of people aren't spending the money to go to some of the overseas shows, except for EICMA.
Yep.
But yeah,
Absolutely.
do we have some other what other thoughts do we have? We have some other we have big plans. We have a lot of give back things that we're working on that will remain undercover
For now.
for now. But know that it's not just about marketing brands to us and supporting dealers, although that's extremely vital to business. But we have some kind of deeper layers of things that we want are working on currently to be a bigger contributor to the industry as a whole.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, we'll be excited to keep tabs on you guys, and hopefully we'll hear about those plans as they arise. But
You and me both.
Jessica, I want to say thanks for joining us. Gunnar, thank you so much for the time today. Guys, thanks for watching this episode of Power Players. We appreciate you tuning in. Make sure you're checking out Brands That Shine and all the brands that they represent. And of course, make sure you're checking out Motorcycle and Powersports News for more of that content. And we appreciate you watching. We'll see you next time. Thank you.